In the last video, we talked about the major players of World War II, including the West, the East, which are part of the Allied powers, and we talked about the Axis powers. And now what we're going to do is we're going to apply those characters to the origins of World War II. First, we're going to start off with the Great Depression, probably the leading cause of World War II in the world. Never has a period of time in modern history produced such a devastating effect on economic culture, on political culture, and so many other issues with inside not only the United States but the world as well. So after the stock market crash in the United States in 1929, most of the world fell into a deep recession. Of course, I talked about Russia was not necessarily affected by the Great Depression. Its trading lines were not really in line with the Allies at the time, though they of course there was some impact, but it was negligible at the time. And what the Great Depression also did is it caused a lot of civil strife. Less people had money, and like most other points in time in history, what happened was during the Great Depression is it wasn't a lot of the rich people who lost the money. A lot of the rich people, especially in the United States, had all their money. The majority of them had all their money. A very tiny minority of rich people and a lot of average individuals, the working poor, the middle class. They're the ones that suffered the most. They had the most liquid of the assets, and when they all essentially dried up in 1929 and huge speculation caused lots of losses, those were the people to bear the brunt. And that loss of wealth causes lots of civil strife. When people can't get what they need when they need it, it causes an issue. And also, we have a lot of radical and reactionary demagogues like Adolf Hitler that happened to occur not only in the United States but in the world as well. The United States tried the New Deal under President Roosevelt. We learned a little bit about that, but you can see here just a look of the depression of on North America. Really, we still have huge issues with inside the unemployment rate. So I mean, over here in the West, you had the worst of the unemployment. In the middle, you had the Dust Bowl, which really crippled the agriculture sector of the Midwest, as well as the Midwest. And then you only had a little bit of economic revival up here in California, in southern Texas. And a lot of it went through some really serious economic decline. Places like Chicago and Ohio really lost a lot of their major sources of income due to businesses closing and stuff like that. And then we can go look at Europe as well, and Europe provides a stark example of what can go wrong. You can kind of look at these bars, and basically what the bars represent are registered unemployed in the thousands. So the higher it goes, the more unemployed there are. And here we can kind of see some numbers here, and as they go on in the future, it looks like the orange is 1928, the dark brown is 1932, and the pink is 1934. You see in 28, unemployment's right about here in Germany, but it skyrockets in 1932, which is, I mean, if you think about it, really correlates with the rise of Adolf Hitler. So a really interesting idea of what's going on in Europe and the United States in economic strife. The Britain and France suffered what they call it's called the Great Slump. And both governments actually remain under fairly conservative leadership, so you don't see a lot of issues with people like Stalin or Hitler, really to the far left or right. And then what happens is during the transition, you have Adolf Hitler, of course, gaining power through the beer hall push. The beer hall push was during the 1922. This was the first instance of Nazi activity with inside Germany. And what happened is that Hitler would actually go go to jail for a few years because of this failed to push this sort of a coup attempt and this happened in Bavaria, which is where Adolf Hitler was from. So he goes to jail and he writes Mein Kampf, which is German for My Struggle, and many know it as the manifesto of the Nazi Party. And slowly but surely, the Nazi Party would win elections and gain seats in the Reichstag. And what happened? It was in 1932. Adolf Hitler, that gentleman right there, and that's Neville Chamberlain. We'll talk about this instance in a moment, but Adolf Hitler and this gentleman down here, this is Paul von Hindenburg. Paul von Hindenburg was Chancellor of the Weimar Republic, and Hitler actually was elected Chancellor of the Weimar Republic by a plurality of the vote. Only about 40% of the people voted for Hitler. But at that time, there were so many other political parties. Hitler had the obvious. I mean, it's not really a majority. They call it a plurality. It's when he has the most votes, but he doesn't have 50% or more. And what happens is in 1933, Paul von Hindenburg, who is essentially the president, the chancellor, he has to abdicate to Hitler. And what happens is there is this huge coup or this huge scandal between Hitler and Hindenburg, because what happens is Hindenburg will eventually abdicate the chancellorship, even though Hitler was technically elected, and Hitler they would kind of co-chancellor for a little bit, and then Hindenburg would resign, knowing that the Nazi Party had so much pull with inside not only the popular vote, but their paramilitary groups. You hear about the stormtroopers and the SS. That really put a lot of pressure on Germany to give power over to this man over here, Adolf Hitler. And so what happens is you get, as I said, you go from the Great Depression over to this idea of fascism and communism. We were talking about the beer hall push. In 1934, Hitler wins a plurality as Chancellor of Germany. And under popular demand, Hindenburg steps down and Hitler is promoted to Chancellor. Very interesting. Between 1934 and 1939, Germany annexes Lebensraum. They call it living space for the German people. And if you look down here, this is a map, a very poignant map telling us the constant acquisitions of Germany between those times. So here you have Germany here. This is Germany pre-1936, and the Rhineland over here in 1936 was militarized again, so Germany put soldiers back into it as part of the Treaty of Versailles. They had to take troops out. Austria was annexed in 1938 here, and then you have, they call it the Sudetenland. There's this little area surrounding Bohemia, and basically the idea was that Germany said that these were people of the German race. These were the Aryan race members over here in the Sudetenland in Bohemia, and they needed to be part of Germany. That was their goal. And this goes into, of course, a lot of the overall philosophy that the Nazis had, that they were the best. And here you have a neat little political cartoon. They call it the Stepping Stones to Glory. And you can kind of see how Hitler over here is slowly walking up these spineless leaders of democracy. And that spineless leader is personified by this man, Neville Chamberlain. And Neville Chamberlain in 1938 would sign the Munich Pact, which was this idea of appeasement. So he gave him this. He gave him Czechoslovakia. Here, look, this is Czechoslovakia. They just took this over. Germany said, we wanted this. And Neville Chamberlain, wanting to avoid a war during an economic slump, said, yes, please take it. If you're not going to invade us, that would be great. Mussolini also had similar issues. You see here, Albania would become a Italian territory in 1939, and before that you had the invasion of Ethiopia by Italian forces, and Italy would take over the rest of this area of Ethiopia. So really interesting stuff going on here, and the West is just letting him do it. And this this whole instance is kind of personified during the 1936 Olympic Games, which were held in Berlin. So here we have a picture of Hitler speaking to the crowds here in Berlin, and of course telling everyone about the greatness of the Aryan race and how those people were the best. But it was funny because a man by the name of Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals at these Olympics, and Hitler, of course, didn't like that very much. That's a little interesting piece of trivia here. Jesse Owens, really famous and great athlete of the time, and really showing that, maybe these ideas of the Aryan race and social Darwinism and superiority, maybe they don't necessarily have as much weight as a man like Hitler would like to think.